Hello everyone! Welcome to Classic Reddit, where real humans read Reddit content. Today's Ask Reddit question is by Delete My Comment, and it is, hospital workers, what regrets do you hear from dying patients? This first post by Rear. He was one of my first patients as a nursing student named Frank. He was 92. After knowing him for a few days, he disclosed to me that his regret was outliving everybody that he loved. He and his wife had not had kids. He was all that was left, and he wanted to see his wife again. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I just listened. And it made me realize how living so long isn't great if everybody you love is gone. He passed away later that week, and while I distinctly recall some of my classmates being upset, I felt some relief for him. I knew he was where he had wanted to be. I've had many patients since, but you tend to remember your first ones. Other than that, ditto to what everyone's saying. More time with family and loved ones. Wish they wasted less time with work and other bullshit. If you're in a lasting relationship, there's a 99% chance one of you will leave the other one behind. It can happen anytime. You might want to prepare for it. My boyfriend was a workaholic and he died when he was 30. Some people just want you to let them go. I had a man with terminal cancer break down crying after his daughters left the room because they wanted him to keep fighting, and he just wanted to rest and pass peacefully. Sometimes you have to learn to let go. My mom, a nurse, has seen this time and time again. She wishes that people would be more realistic and compassionate to the actual suffering their loved one is going through for a few extra days or hours. He wished he had been a better father to his daughter. He wished they had reconnected. His dementia prevented him from remembering they had reconnected years before and that she visited often. I wish I could have made him aware that he had accomplished his last wish, but he died not really understanding that. Dementia is the worst. My gran passed away about a year ago, and by the end she was a shell. She spent the last 40 to 50 years being pissed off at my grandfather, which, considering no one else in her family had anything like dementia, it was probably a main factor. This is my biggest fear. I have an amazing life that I'm grateful for every day, and the thought of not being able to remember any of it or any of the incredible people in it just frightens me to my core. It absolutely terrifies me. This post by Moon Pixie. And what is the regret you hear from dying patients as a hospital care worker? I worked in long-term care for 12 years. I remember a married couple that shared a room. She had cancer and kidney failure. I was helping her eat lunch one day with her husband. She looked like death, but her husband looked at her and then at me and said, "Have you ever seen a more beautiful woman?" I had to leave and go to the bathroom and cry. I cried for days every thought of what he said. I thought I would never know what it was like to be loved like that. I had been divorced for years. I couldn't even tell the story without tearing up. Footnote: I was divorced 23 years when I met Rod. Been together for 11 years. I know that love now. It's never too late. Oh, that's sweet. I'm tearing up a little bit. When I read this, I saw my husband. We've been married for 19 years now, and I'm not pretty at all. But every day, at some point in the day, he will stare at me and say, "You're beautiful." And several times along the day, he will say, "I love you." I haven't told you that in a while. I know I have a wonderful husband, but this made me cry because I could see the us in your story. I was at my grandmother's side when she passed. The day before, my grandfather was gazing at her unresponsive face, gently combing her hair with his fingers. She's always been so beautiful. The next day, as she passed, he held her hand saying, 55 years just wasn't enough. He tried to live without her for about a year, but one day he said, "I think I'll go see Nancy now," and died in his sleep. We can all hope for a passing like that. I saw the same thing with a close family friend as his wife was dying from colon cancer that had spread everywhere. She looked like a skeleton and died only 4 days later. He called her his girl and smiled a huge smile when he looked at her and showed her such obvious and genuine tenderness and love as he held a drink with a straw up to her barely conscious lips. I've never witnessed such love in my life. I had recently broken up with someone I dated after getting divorced from the person I was with for 12 years, and it really hit me hard. Someday I hope to find that. This post by Majabi. I worked as an oncology nurse right out of nursing school. I was barely 21 years old. Had a patient about my age who was dying of lung cancer. A few hours before he died, I sat with him and he was telling me how much he wished that he would have had more time, maybe to fall in love, to marry, have children. He was so young. He asked me to call his parents and he died shortly after they arrived. It was awful. His regrets were more about the life he hadn't lived yet. Many older patients had some interesting life stories, and most wanted to tell us their stories before they died. Most were at peace with the life they had lived. Many regretted working so much and not spending enough time with their family. Sometimes I feel my bones straining under the weight of all the lives that I'm not living. Jonathan Saffron Foer, extremely loud and incredibly close. This moves me. I just turned 22 and I think the same as the young man. I'm so afraid if something unfortunate were to happen, I would wish, for the most part, for love, kids, marriage, family. In the emergency room, it's not something most people see coming when they arrive, but it's usually the same regret when they are coherent. They all wish their family was there, which sucks even more lately with COVID since the family can't see them. Or they cry out for their significant other in panic. It's gotten to the point where recently we'll just tell them, "This person is right here with you." The look of relief on people's faces just hearing that gets me every single time. In the end, when people are dying, people just don't want to be alone. In a confession subreddit, a dude confessed how he was with a man. During his last moments, he crashed his truck in the roadside. Original poster was behind him and called the urgencies. As original poster was waiting the ambulance, even hearing it, the man asked his wife where she was, that he wanted to see her. The original poster tried to comfort as best as he could, saying she was on her way. The man died when the ambulance arrived. Sometimes after, he was looking for the man on social networks. He found out that his wife had already passed, and that he said to the man that his late wife was on her way. Thanks for being with them. This seems so much more poignant in the age of COVID, where people are so alone in death. Thanks for being there. God, that last part took my breath away. I want to be there for my husband when he passes, but god damn, if it doesn't feel impossible to handle. The idea that he'll be gone, and I'll probably have to watch, is so awful. But I still hope that it's him that goes first, because I think I'd handle it better than him. We're the same age. I'm glad most people have their significant other with them. Heh, for what it's worth, it's not hard to handle when you see someone you love die, you know what to do, you hug them. All of these stories have me crying first thing in the morning. It makes sense that I'm not the only one worried about this. I've drawn some comfort from some of you who witnessed a peaceful end. Thanks for the support, Reddit. Reddit supportive? What? Woof. Wow, this is hard to read. Dang. Okay, I guess that's kind of the point though. You're alive right now, right? And you better be damn grateful for it, because you don't know what's gonna happen. To you or to people you care about. Don't be like most of the people who are just running around wasting their lives, spending their energy doing things for other people than the people they love. My Nana is suffering hard from dementia. She doesn't remember that her husband died 12 years ago, so sometimes she'll ask where he is. We decided to just tell her he's at the shop because there's no point in reopening those wounds over and over again. Here's a long post by Nurse Astley, 216. I was a new nurse flying solo. We got a call for an incoming trauma, a woman in her 50s involved in a multi-car accident. We were already at the ambulance bay, unsure of the woman's complete condition. She rolled in, breathing on her own, but very labored with asymmetrical chest expansion. She was profusely bleeding, had multiple deep lacerations, pupils were blown, debris covering most of her. Her vitals were unstable. She was circling the drain, and we knew she was on the verge of coding. I was standing near her head, ready to assist in supporting her airway, but also providing comfort and doing my best to calm her. The woman looked at me directly in the eyes and in a hoarse, labored voice stated, "I was angry. I told her I was disappointed in her." She began to cry, her vitals plummeted. "I'm sorry." And that was the last thing she said before her heart stopped. We coded her, intubated her, performed round after round, only to eventually call time of death. I still see her face at times, her eyes filled with more emotional pain than physical. It took much longer and so much harder to write this than I thought it would be. Oh man, that was my biggest fear as a kid, and still pretty big now. My mom and I had a thing that no matter how angry we were, or how busy, we would tell each other, "I love you," before splitting up. Whether it was a short car ride, a phone call, or a cross-county trip, just in case. That's so true. Like, as a person so my dad died when I was 12, right? And if I can tell you anything I learned from that, it's that you can't treat people badly. Because you never know it's going to happen. And in my case, I ignored my father. Yeah, it's true, I was just a kid, but ultimately you can always find an excuse. And really, you have to admit that you fucked up. And I fucked up. I just read books and played video games, and I ran away from the fact that he was sick. And I did that for so long that by the time I realized that he was dying, he was already dead. And I wasted the time that I could have spent with him, talking to him. I ran away from it. And I regret that. Absolutely, I regret that. Whew. Damn. Okay. I read this and teared up. It's almost a metaphor for the pain we pass to each other as humans. One person's torture leads to another's. You have to live with that traumatic memory now, but it's not your fault. It's not really hers either. Out of all the stories I've read on this thread, this one hit me the hardest. It's probably the most relatable. This response by Boloine Knievel. I was a hospice nurse. One of my elderly patients had skin cancer, a huge malignant melanoma on the side of his neck that was growing rapidly. He had been a farmer all of his life and never married. One night we were talking and I asked him if there was anything he wished he had done differently in his life, and he thought about it a minute or two, and he said that he wished he'd worn a hat. I wish that he did too. I love his answer. I hope he's farming in a better place now, with a hat on. Dang, this comment out of all of them is the one that made me cry. Bro, you should try reading these comments out loud. It's hardcore, Jesus. I'm a hospice social worker, so I have the honor of getting to listen to people's life stories, including favorite memories and regrets. Most regrets center around what they didn't get to do, like never traveling to Italy when their families were originally from Naples. Some regret not getting specific education, wanting to go to college but never doing it. Some regret their choice in partner, especially when alcohol or drug abuse was involved, or cheating. Many express a sadness that looks a lot like regret if they are estranged from family, and some have anticipatory grief from knowing they will miss a milestone, like the birth of a grandchild. Some regret not taking better care of their health. In general, life is long, and time soothes some of the rough edges, so people tend to focus on the good. I work in a hospital. Whenever someone is at the end of their life, they always just want to be with their loved ones. Any regrets I've heard is always family related. They want more time with the people that they love. Most people are at peace with things though. People also tend to wish that they took their health more seriously. I read an essay by a dying woman once. I remember the lines, "I want more time with Jason," her husband. "I want more time with my kids." She was 51 when she wrote this and died. Her kids were in college or just passed. She'd been married about half her life, and her husband was about the same age, so a young widower. What you just said reminded me of that. Everyone wants what they can't have. Time. I could see how, F that. That is such bullshit. Just because everyone you know and most humans are running around giving their time away to other people, that doesn't mean that you can't live a life where you have all the time that you need. That is something you should aspire to. If you really love your family or anybody, yourself included, you need to get yourself in a position where you have all day to do what you want and to spend it with the people you love. Because that's the only way to really live a meaningful life. And you can tell yourself bullshit about how that's not possible, but it is. And you're alive and you're here now. So if you don't think that way, then you're gonna die and wasted your time on other people who are irrelevant to you or the people you care about. The only people who are worth your time are you and the people who you choose to be close to. Nobody else. And that's hard. It's hard to do that. But if you don't, then you get lost. I could see how if your last wish was more time with loved ones, your main regret would be working less. End of life physician here. CPR. No, seriously, hear me out. Imagine using your hands to crush the sternum down 2 inches repeatedly of your 90-year-old grandmother who weighs 90 pounds, so that maybe you can then put her on a ventilator from which she might never get off of. We ask this of everyone who comes into the hospital, but too often it's asked more like, "Hey, if you're drowning, do you want us to save you?" Rather than what's truly happening, which is that you're dying. And we can't stop that. We can just delay it. But you're not alive anymore. The survival statistics for patients with 1 to 2 significant comorbidities in an in-hospital cardiac arrest is less than 5% to leave alive. And then 30-day survival is 5% of that 5%. I cannot count the number of times where families were adamant on having it done to their loved one, only to then see what it entails firsthand and beg us to not do it again. I could see that. That's why they have things called DNRs, do not resuscitate forms. So when you have like a terminal patient or something, that's always like, for your loved ones, putting a DNR out, that's intense. That's definitely like, for me, that's something I remember. I remember the DNR form on the door of the room my father died in. And I remember being like 11 and feeling that that was right. That was the right thing to do, which is crazy. Fucked right. My husband, 33, suffered cardiac arrest last year in December. We were alone in a strange city, looking for a place to eat. Luckily, the car was barely moving at the time because he was driving. I did chest compressions until rescue arrived. About 5 minutes. What I learned in the ER that night is that outcomes for cardiac arrest are typically terrible if the patient doesn't regain consciousness right away. They immediately prepared me for brain damage. Somehow he woke up with his brain perfect as they were preparing to ice him down, about 3 hours after his collapse. I learned during his hospital stay that chest compressions outside of a hospital almost never have good outcome. His heart was completely done and he had to get a transplant, so we got really lucky with his CPR. I'm glad I didn't know what might have happened because I don't know if I would have been able to keep on going. I've done CPR twice. It's not something I ever want to do again. The one was a very old lady, and just feeling the ribs break and the rubbing of the ribs, it gives me chills. I did training to be a CNA, and we had to work in a nursing home as part of our training. I didn't really get into any deep conversations with the patients here, but I can say this. If you have a family in a nursing home, please visit them. It's a sad and lonely place. It really is. I'm doing my nursing school clinical in one right now, and it's sad. On my shift yesterday, people asked me to translate for one resident who was agitated and crying in Portuguese. No one could understand her. I went to her room and asked her what she needs. She said she wants to go to bed and sleep. She's alone, doesn't have her husband, and her kids forgot about her. It's just sad. I'm all alone, she said with tears in her eyes. Please visit your family if they're in a nursing home. There are several comments that mention the trauma bad or abusive parenting can cause, and how that would affect whether someone gets visitors or not. I just want to acknowledge you all and tell you no one is judging you, and my message was not for you folks. We all need to find our own peace in life, and that means cutting off abusers. My message was intended for those of us who intend to visit or call mom or dad, but life seems to just get in the way. Those of us who may not realize just how lonely life in those facilities can be. Thanks for this. Last March, my dad was all set to move into a nursing home that he and my mom chose for themselves about 15 years ago. The pandemic broke, and I've kept him in his apartment since, taking care of him myself. At a certain point, I won't be able to care for him by myself, and he'll have to go. He is the snuggliest man, and to live without touch will probably kill him fast. I don't mind that he will probably die in the next few hours. Years. I do mind if he dies of loneliness and isolation. Whew. Alright, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you want to make this kind of content, please reach out to us. You can go to our About page on our YouTube channel and then click on the contact link, do a CAPTCHA, and send us an email, say hello. We want to do a Zoom call with you. We are looking for other people who are interested in running YouTube channels, but they feel overwhelmed by how much time it takes to edit content and make videos the traditional way. So what if you could record your screen and explore, read, and react to content in front of you? And you can pick what kind of content you can pick. Think about it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ciao.